should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
Yeah, boom to the hey, all you sports fans out there in the tubosphere, or to you, the individual, as part of this collective. Welcome to OMSR Gen 5.0 with your brief, but very concise, even when words said thrice, host Will, the alternative ESPN sportsman, cliche, who will never refer to the audience as knuckleheads. Alright, doing the intro show thing-a-ling-a-majing, little preview of the clips. Highlights-wise, coming up in the last two wherefores. Part 2 of DEFLATEGATE, go ahead and snicker, I know it's a little bit late. However, it has a nice amalgamation, the politics of it and all, taken from the news pundits' view of it, maybe a little bit more refined than some of the sports punditry you might have heard of. Maybe if you're still interested in, those of you who will be watching this, got some funny bits here going on hardball. Not sure what your political viewing habits may be, but good stuff going on there. A little bit left of center network-wise, or the net to how he was saying, well, I haven't digested it yet. I want to make sure, I'm comfortable with what I'm saying. All that's done and over with. When we get to the quickie sport rant of the segment, I'm going to talk about the will to do whatever it takes must also take responsibility when it all comes out. And there's a way he could have avoided it. Save face. And none of this would have happened, but so often in life we see this. We see it in politics, we see it at the business side of things. Oh, what are you talking about? And it just snowballs from there, right? Might have seen, I also got a little bit of part of the expose. That's the OMSRs wanted to include some of the lessons and some of the best parts or insightful things from Baltimore. For the record, still, as of like 3 or 4 weeks later, it was only that Monday night of rioting going on. So this gal here, Tamakwa, excuse me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, Jones, and what happened to her brother, and then KWAME Rose, who was giving Geraldo a hard time. Well, Geraldo's brought it on himself ever since the debacle Al Capone's vault. Some of you may not remember that. This is, the middle to late 90s. He was quite the well-respected journalist until then, because he swore up and down that this was going to happen. Alright, so we got Dwayne Darnett, Ultimate Sports Fan, your OMSR mascot, and a few of the PAL, Pi Kappa Alpha style house cheerleaders. U of U chapter Alpha Tau. The good life. I would just say to U of U, 20 years ago, what was happening after the SAE debacle at Oklahoma was sort of like a can of worms. Couldn't get it back, Pandora back in the box. So I was like, man, I'm just going to pull back for a while, because I was like cringing the day they said Pi Kappa Psi. I was like, don't be Pi Kappa Alpha, please. The true fight. It's a credo and a mantra we've all adhered to. You must conduct yourself with class and dignity at all times. I say that all the time. Many idiom or a mantra on the show, some of my substitute. Alright, so that's what's coming up. We're going to ingress now to the main feature of Gen 5.0, which is the will in a box. Down here in the corner. Low profile, low drag, high speed, in the form of chime in every once in a while between their sound bites, there being the commentators on site, on point. I sort of being like the third or fourth commentator, be it political or just sports dedicated wise. But with regard to Baltimore, I thought this was important because this gal's looking at Chris Hayes. Chris Hayes he's great on MSNBC and all, but he comes off not like empathetic enough, not enough raw emotion, too intellectualizing the situation he was put in, because you could tell by her expression she's like, say something meaningful, but I just asking these very matter-of-fact questions without responding to my feelings here. I'm with her. Also trying to do this to let some of the African Americans know back east, for sure, some of my subs. There's a lot of us white folks. And yeah, I suspect maybe it's more a Rocky Mountain thing out west for sure. There's no prevailing ethnism running around Aryan nations up in northern Idaho notwithstanding, but this was back in the 90s. And so I don't understand what my fellow Caucasians may be doing back east to perpetuate ethnic tendencies. Notice I keep saying, a play on the word, which the actual word, ethnocentricity. How can it be racism? We're all in the human race. We're not in the Star Trek world. Now, we had Klingons and Romulans running around. That would be different.
You had a lot to say to Geraldo the other night about
I'm gonna include to be
the focus perhaps on the stuff that went
yeah,
down.
there's Geraldo being all
when
smug.
no one was
Yeah,
here.
can't believe this guy's giving,
What was your reaction to the
you brought it on yourself.
Geraldo's
built up his reputation of, the ultimate yellow journalist. That's what he's pursuing. Dirt.
But I was right there. I feel as though the same way as this young lady feels. This was just the first step in a long process, hopefully in the right direction, but we know that the court system of America does not convict killer cops of black folks at all. So it's a good step. Hopefully it's not false hope, though.
Do you have confidence? I mean, how is this going to play out? What is it going to be like here as this works its way through the justice system?
If you look at the news conference today and you saw the state's attorney
Now,
basically
granted, this is from a couple weeks ago, but yeah.
Minus the
It's the second to the last part of the stuff that I captured from Baltimore that I want to include. So there's a digital record of it in perpetuity. It doesn't matter if there's only one view. If I get through to just one person, let one black person out there know, or a Caucasian know, be a little more sensitive as to how you're expressing things, because you're not really an ethnicist, but it comes out that way sometimes. My work is done. Well, just begun, but I'll take those. I'll take those steps.
Of course, the police officers are warning that they will now be in danger because of what happened, that this will essentially embolden people to challenge the police in Baltimore. What do you say to that?
I say that's a bunch of foolishness, because if you do your job and you keep your hands off us and stop brutalizing us, you wouldn't be getting charged. And that's the saddest part. This world came to, everybody was literally in tears, waiting on the end of their seats all over the world, looking to see if they were just going to get charges that was due to them. Like, are you kidding me? Are you serious? Killer cops along the South Block, flat out.
Yeah, everybody's on the edge of their seat. Right, it's like, to see if it would take place, would be part of, due diligence, due process. Just, got a point.
I mean, I think if you look at ever since anyone that's been out here continuously since the announcement was made,
there's what I mean. See how she's kind of like, she's giving him that look. Not that he's part of the problem. It's like, don't you have something to express emotionally, right? That's my take.
They're encouraging the youth to march, but the police are just geared up for, it seems as they're scared of black lives in America.
And I just want to say I'm so proud of the youth here in Baltimore. They have been the leaders in this. They have been leading out, walking out school peacefully, doing stuff right. They are not thugs. They are not thugs. They are, if anybody should be afraid, it's the young youth. Freddie Gray was walking down the street, looking at an officer, and you get brutally murdered. My brother was driving while black and was brutally assassinated. And the same two cops, Nicholas David Chapman and Ruiz, the first ones that pulled them over and started brutally murdering him, they beat up Abdul Salam inches away from his life in front of his baby in the same neighborhood, and nothing was done. We still don't have my brother's autopsy report. How do you do an autopsy? They're saying it's complete, but how is it complete?
At least I felt that way hearing it. This is
93 weeks we've been peacefully protesting, actively out here.
What, 3 weeks ago, this week, Tuesday night.
But they weren't going to get away with it because they know the Wax family in Baltimore City has been out here on the front line. Daily, we don't do this every day. We do this with or without y'all cameras. We do this in high heat, cold air, with or without anyone. When people want to stand with them, when they don't. This is lives on the line. It is a shame.
Alright. So just briefly, before we get into duties, connected with and to, but not attached to per se, NBC Sports. Well known pro football, sports talk, something like that. You'll hear it in a second coming up. But yeah, I just wanted to give her, some props. You got a voice, at least vis-a-vis this particular episode. And just to close on, why Geraldo's gotten the reputation that he has, because he, believe it or not, back in the 90s, early 90s when Geraldo started. I don't remember on which network. I want to say he sat in and guest anchored for, but that may not be true. Some of you in my generation, early 40-somethings, therefore at the tail end, sorry, 50-somethings, late 30-somethings might remember watching when there were basically only 3 networks for news back then. CNN was not the force to be reckoned with that it is now. MSNBC didn't exist. Was it Dan Rather? Was it Tom Brokaw? Peter Jennings? I can't recall. It might have been ABC, I'm thinking. 2020 report, something like that. Geraldo was a serious journalist. And then the Al Capone vault, they opened up the wall. Nothing, to make a long story. This is like 1996, 1990. Everyone looked the fool, especially him. He caught a lot of heat for that because he swore up and down, personal guarantee, professional guarantee, this, that, and the other. His sources, they were going to find a bunch of stuff, supposed stuff that never got found, rooted out Al Capone's past, including some significant pieces of like history, like we still don't know, like the St. Valentine's Day massacre, stuff of this nature, and it was all bupkis. So ever since then, he's been kind of tainted with that. Another way to say it, yellow journalists, chasing dirt story. The not newsworthy, but more the sensational worthy type of stories. All right, now we're going to get into the highlights till we get to the segue for the quickie sport. Highlights part 1, basically. Mike Florio.
We'll start though, Willie, with
Pro Football Talk.
Let's start there. New England Patriots star quarterback Tom Brady suspended for the first 4
Well, I
games
did say it was
of
the
season
politics
without
of
pay.
Deflategate, a little bit different take on it, rather than just from sports punditry.
Next season and another one in 2017. This fine matches the largest the league has ever handed out. Yesterday, the NFL's executive vice president Troy Vincent wrote this in a letter to Brady, quote, "There is substantial and credible evidence to conclude you are at least generally aware of the actions of the Patriots employees involved in the deflation of the footballs. Your actions are set forth in the report clearly constitute conduct detrimental to the integrity of and public confidence in the game of professional football." Brady's agent, meanwhile, said Brady will appeal the suspension.
Ergo, on the sport rant, I'm going to explain how this all could have been avoided.
Adding this, quote, "I am very confident the Wells report will be exposed as an incredibly frail exercise
Taoistic or Buddhism,
Mike, it's good to have you with us this
Buddhistic
morning.
principles.
Take the
I
Patriots
prefer
position on
Taoism.
this. A lot of smoke,
Taoism came
no fire in the report,
well
a lot
before
of circumstantial evidence, nothing
700
directly
years to
tying
be
Tom
exact.
Brady.
Origin of the yin and yang. I've been a Taoist for 20 years. 20 some odd. Finally been getting it lately, all in the last 2 years, the deeper meaning behind it. But
in Deflategate, how does the NFL defend this massive
taking a negative and turning it into a positive, but doing it on the fly so you don't look like a dumbass. That didn't happen here, obviously.
And here the Patriots would say, well, you have circumstantial evidence of what? What is the circumstantial evidence? Where's the evidence that there was tampering with the footballs on January 18 against the Colts? And that's where the science gets a little bit fishy for the NFL, because there were 2 pressure gauges used that day that had a spread of up to 0.45 pounds per square inch, almost a half of a pound, and you're talking about not many differences in the footballs as it relates to what the weather would have predicted that day. So I think the Patriots look at this and say there is no smoking gun, there is no clear evidence, and everything else is just conjecture. Maybe it's evidence of things that shouldn't have happened in the past.
So my question to you is, how does such a minor infraction explode into this? What happened here?
I think that what happened was, when this occurred and when they were testing the footballs at halftime of that playoff game and they saw the numbers that were below 12.5, I don't think they understood at the time that the atmospheric conditions will cause those numbers to drop when they start at 12.5, and somebody decided this was a big deal. Even though chain of custody, the inflation protocols, they weren't laboratory quality before then, somebody decided this was a big deal and they decided they were going to push this. I think the text messages gave real life to this investigation. Without those text messages between John Yastrzemski and Jim McNally, I don't think there's enough evidence to conclude anything. But once they saw those text messages, interpret them through this context,
there may be something to that. I mean, I said that on part one. I included a graphic, put it all together, the basic physics of it and all, low pressure, high pressure, temperature-wise, and inclement weather.
Ultimately, isn't that what the NFL wants? The quarterbacks to be able to throw the footballs, as long as it still looks like a football. Should it really matter?
Look, I have to, I have to be the skunk at the garden party here. I don't think you can have it both ways. You can't say, well, it was atmospheric conditions and quarterbacks ought to be able to.
I mean, there's two sides to every coin. Can't argue with that. Is this really such a big deal? The subject matter, no. The way Brady went about it, it's a practical matter of principle. With what's going on in the world, no. But in sports, sportsmanship, honor, ethics, and all that.
You're a hero to a lot of kids. The sport is held up on a pedestal. And if the biggest name in sports is involved in this and you don't take a stern action, you're sending a signal to a lot of people that you're winking and nodding. And it doesn't matter what size the infraction is. And he wasn't honest about it. And I think those two things.
All right, freeze that. Segue to the sport rant of the segment. The SRSOA, sport rant segue this away. Alright, Howie could have had it both. Because this may in fact be what happened. Brady might have been telling the guys, hey, now the reason dude went in the bathroom in the first place was to sort of make sure that all the balls were sort of at the allowable low end of the range. Still in the 12 some odd, but not quite at 12.5. All of us who played football in inclement weather, whether organized or not, that has a sting to it. Of course, wearing gloves nowadays, most wide receivers do, especially in inclement weather, to keep your hands from getting all numb and whatnot, but the ball's still hard to catch. Anyway, that may in fact be what was going on. And the contingency plan would have been, Brady just simply told those guys, if this comes out, we're just gonna, this is the cover story. If there was intent to get away with something, quote unquote, right? But all he had to do was just sort of come out on that press conference and go, yeah, I did talk to the equipment guys, sort of keep an eye on the pressure, if we could just keep them at the lower end of what the NFL allows. Sorry if it appeared to be some other sort of impropriety to give us an advantage. Not really, but there are allowable limits. The pressure gauge readings show it to be true, and that's all I have to say about it. Equipment guys could have backed it up. Tom Brady comes out right away. Instead, the will to do whatever it takes, getting busted, as it were, and then hiding behind, I haven't had time to digest it yet, better mind my P's and Q's, get the lawyer in, speaking for him, instead of just coming out, being the face and the man, getting in front of it, as it said in political speak, getting in front of the story, in front of the issue, and it goes bye-bye. Now, because he's sort of stuck in the middle, because they lowered the boom, he has to go and go through the process of, well, I'm going to contest that 4-game suspension. Makes him look like even more of a weenie. Harbaugh's going to find a way to motivate, this Michigan team and heretofore into perpetuity. You're a Michigan alum. You never get caught doing this sort of thing. You never have to do this thing in the first place. And if you do, you always have an out. All right, many more highlights coming up. Thanks for watching. No silly DUIs while you're out there. Reminding you, sports and alcohol, they are joined at the hip. Roll clips.
I will say, just as a general matter, that I do think that people around the world, particularly children, particularly boys, do look up to Tom Brady. And I think that as he confronts this particular situation and he determines what the next steps will be for him, that he'll be mindful of the way that he serves to be, the way he serves as a role model to so many, not just American kids, as you point out, but to kids around the world.
When delivering that discipline yesterday, NFL Executive Vice President for Operations Troy Vincent wrote in a letter to Brady, your actions, as set forth in the report, clearly constitute conduct detrimental to the integrity of and public confidence in the game of professional football. Anyway, the decision came after the league's investigation found, quote, it is more probable than not that Brady was at least generally aware of the inappropriate activities. Anyway, Brady's agent, Donald Yee, blasted the initial report and the league's disciplinary measures. He said, quote, the discipline is ridiculous and has no legitimate basis. There's no evidence that Tom directed footballs be set at pressures below the allowable limits. Was the NFL's decision too harsh, or did they send the right message? I'm joined right now by Randall Hill, a former wide receiver for the Dolphins, Arizona Cardinals, and New Orleans Saints, and Sean Gregory, who's senior writer for Time. Let me go with Randall. You had the right call on this, I think, a couple of nights ago here. Are you happy with the way they assigned the guilt and the blame and the sanctions?
I am extremely happy. You know, it is what it is. You know, it's not necessarily happy or sad, but I knew Troy was going to come down the way he did because I played with him. You know, he has the utmost respect for the game, and he wants to see the game played properly.
Mr. Gregory, what do you think of the call?
I think it was too harsh. I think, you know, the Wells report is very well done and is persuasive. However, it goes out of its way to specify that there's less direct evidence linking Tom Brady to this than the locker room attendance. So that gives Brady wiggle room, I believe, to get this penalty shortened.
Well, if they couldn't prove it, the Wells report, as you suggest, should they have not said anything? And if they said it probably happened, should they have not done anything here? I mean, which is it? Do you say they shouldn't have reported there was a problem with this behavior, a question about it, or not? Because once they said it was probable that he knew about it, what should they have done then?
You're talking about the NFL?
Yeah. Once they said that Brady probably knew about it, right. Then what were they supposed to do? Or should they have covered up the fact they thought he probably was involved?
No, I think it's a one-game suspension, maybe a two-game.
No, you're not answering my question. What should they have done in the NFL? Because you don't like the way they did it. Should they have covered up for the fact they thought he probably did it, or said he probably did it but not punish him? Because either one, there's only two possibilities in the way you're thinking here. Which is it?
I'm sorry, Chris, I really don't understand. I don't understand the question.
Okay, well, it's not complicated. Should they have covered up the fact they thought he probably was aware of it? Should they have covered that up?
Should the NFL have covered that up? No.
Yeah. Okay. Once they declared it in the Wells report that they believed he was probably aware of the whole thing.
Well, then you could punish the Patriots and Tom Brady like they did. All I'm saying is 4 games, a quarter of a season, when there's wiggle room for Tom Brady to get out of this, I think is too harsh.
Too harsh if he probably did it, but not too harsh if he definitely did it. So if you had more evidence, it'd be for the 4 games.
I think so, yeah. I mean, if it was, you know, direct, there's no evidence really in here that Tom Brady.
If there's more evidence, I'm trying to figure out where you're at here because I can't clear it up.
When I read through it, I thought that the fact that the Wells report leaned pretty heavily on communication between Brady and the locker room attendants. Okay, I'm just trying to
find out. If we find out more evidence that locks this case up, would you then be for this degree of punishment, the 4 games and the 2 draft picks and $1 million?
If something else comes out that it's definitely Tom Brady was behind this and definitely running this operation, of course, sure.
Okay, let me go over to Randall. This is a question people have, and I've always wondered how the communication worked. They gave the guy a few tchotchkes in the locker room, the equipment guys. They got little gifts from the quarterback. How else do we know about the communication? They got the word, I like this at 10.5 PSI.
Listen, it is very, very obvious that Mr. Brady has a good relationship with these equipment managers. Usually quarterbacks do have a very good relationship with these equipment managers. So, and I'm willing to bet that he directed them to, you know, go ahead, let's take a little bit out here, take a little bit out there, because the equipment manager or an assistant equipment manager is not going to do that on their own. Are you kidding me? And then for him to come back and say, I don't even know this guy's name, please, that's being smug, arrogant, and it's actually a slap in the face to the game.
Well, Mr. McNally knows his own name, and he's out of football. What do you think of that, Mr. Gregory? That the little guy now is canned. For the rest of his life, he'll know why he did it, but it won't do him much good because he's finished in football, whereas the other guy's off for 4 weeks.
I think it's a sad result. No, there's no winners here. It's not happy. All I'm saying is that, you know, McNally, there was direct evidence. He called himself the deflator.
Okay, Sean, I get your point. I want to rub it in my argument. My argument is this. I've watched Tom Brady in that thing when he had the watch cap on. I watched the other day at that Homer Love Fest up there at Salem State. And not once did he make a clear-cut statement. I don't know anything about deflating balls. I've never had a conversation on the subject with anybody. This is completely beyond my knowledge. He never did that. He was cute. He smirked. And you could have watched him the whole time and got the idea, this guy's wise to it all, and he's having a good time laughing at people. Did you get the sense he could have come clean? That he could have made it very clear. If he was totally innocent, he would have made that clear. Because he didn't.
Yeah, no, totally. And he's been cute the whole time. I mean, you don't have to like how he's handled this. I don't think the Patriots have handled this that well.
But if you were innocent, wouldn't you make it clear you're innocent? Wouldn't you be screaming to high heaven? I don't know what these jokers are up to. I don't know these guys what they're up to. I would never do something like that. He never said that.
That definitely looks suspicious, Chris, no doubt.
Okay, thanks so much. Sorry to be hard on you, but welcome to Hardball, my friend. Sean Gregory. And thank you, Randall Hell. By the way, Randall, you had this right from the beginning. Up next is Welcome back to Hardball. It's been 2 weeks, believe it or not, since the Wells report concluded the New England Patriots quarterback Tom Brady was probably generally aware of the deflated footballs he used against the Colts in that AFC Championship game. While the Patriots announced yesterday that they will not appeal their punishment for the incident, Brady himself, who did not cooperate with the Wells investigation, is fighting to overturn his 4-game suspension next year, at the end of this year, rather. NFL Commissioner Robert Goodell was set to hear Brady's appeal, and he spoke about it at a press conference today.
What would you have to hear from Tom Brady in order to either reduce or vacate his suspension?
The key for us is to be able to allow any information that Tom Brady and his representatives have. I look forward to hearing directly from Tom on that. And is there any new information or information that he can bring more clarity to, or something that wasn't considered in the Wells report?
I'm joined right now by football writer Robert Klemko of Sports Illustrated. Robert, what could he possibly bring into the eyes and mind and heart and spirit of Roger Goodell that would say, you know, how about 2 games? What's going to change this thing?
I think that Goodell is leaving the door open for Tom Brady to supply the text messages and emails pertinent to the case that were initially requested by Wells and not provided by Brady's camp. I think that was a very clear nod to that point. Again, it's been characterized that Brady needs to hand over his cell phone, but really they just want printouts of any relevant texts. Short of that, I still think there's a precedent for this suspension to get shortened. In the past, players have been punished for not cooperating with investigations, but never to this extent.
Let me ask you about what he might do. Here's what I think Brady's going to do. I think Brady's going to use this as a chance to make himself look better for everybody. He's going to show that he's been autographing footballs for years, autographing pieces of paper for years, that he's been giving away souvenirs for years, and the fact that he gave them to the great deflator and the other guy in the locker room was no indication of a quid pro quo. Your thoughts on that? I think he's going to try to shine up his reputation through this process. Then he can't lose.
Well, I think the 2 biggest things in the Brady suspension, the reasons for them, are the fact that he didn't cooperate with the investigation, and nobody believes that these 2 equipment managers acted on their own without his urging to deflate footballs. So just the fact that the team suspended these 2 guys is in part an indictment on Brady and his role.
Yeah. Well, where are they going to end up, these 2 guys, these Rosencrantz and Guildensterns, these small playing characters that nobody cares about? I care about them. Are they ever going to work again in the NFL? Are they done? And if they're done, how can Brady be even partially innocent? Your thoughts?
I think those guys will come back to the Patriots in some form or fashion. They've been suspended from handling footballs, being a part of that process, but they haven't been fired yet. I think once this all blows over, they'll get roles with the team. But it's a pretty apt title for those guys, Rosencrantz and Guildenstein.
Yeah, well, what do you do to these guys? You say you can't be within 100 feet of a football, and yet you're working in a football stadium? I mean, what kind of a deal is that? It's like you can't be near your wife again. Oh, I can't be near a football again?
They'll be in charge of the cleats or something.
Yeah, oh, God. You know what? The Great Deflator. You ought to write the book. Maybe you'll make a buck on it. Thank you, Robert Klemko, my favorite. There it is, Sports Illustrated. Is it still, your magazine still have that thing where if you get on the cover, you're finished? Does that still work that way?
Yeah, it's something like the Madden video game curse, but maybe worse.